Lesson 5. I'll be using this image for most of my edits. All right, so I've got my image open, and the lesson, of course, is going to focus on going from camera raw to other, making various edits. Like the first one that I'm going to be touching on is the white balance. I'm already seeing a lot of things that are inconsistent between Photoshop and Photopea for this assignment, but I do believe that I'll be able to kind of keep up with the actual edits that they're doing, even if they don't look quite the same. So adjusting the white balance. I'm going to go to image, adjustments, and color balance, because Photopea doesn't have the camera raw option that was referred to in the lesson. So I'm thinking that this will be the next best option, since there is not a white balance menu. So in the lesson it says to go to File, Open in Camera Raw. Photopea says that it has the ability to open camera raw images, as you can see when you open the tab originally. One moment. So right here, it indicates that it can open raw images. However, I couldn't figure out how to make the image that I'm working with become a camera raw. It was taken on a digital camera, but it actually still imported as a JPG file. So my plan is to just work to emulate the edits that the book does, so that I can still see the results. So that said, I won't be going to File and then Camera Raw per se. However, I will be doing the next best thing to white balance. And I'm trying to see what exactly that is. What is the next best option? Because I see that doing adjustments and color balance brings up other options besides white balance. It's not quite the same, I don't think. So this is black and white, and I don't think this is gonna do it. So I'm gonna go back to image and adjustments. Levels is gonna be something different. Exposure sounds similar to me, but I may end up going with exposure actually. All right. So I'll do exposure and see if I can emulate what the book has going on. Adjusting the white balance. If you plan to modify the white balance, make it the first thing that you do, because it's going to affect all of the other changes in the image. All right, so they set their setting to cloudy under the basic option, or under the basic panel. I don't have that, so they chose cloudy from the white balance menu. Then they selected the white balance tool at the top of the camera raw dialog, and it looks like an eye drop. Click the white clouds in the image. The lighting of the image changes. So they made their lighting a little bit lighter. Click a different area of the clouds, the lighting shifts. Click the clouds directly to the left of the steeple. This selection removes most of the color casts and results in realistic lighting. Move the tint slider to -22 to intensify the greens. All right, so I do know I can find tint and all of that. So let me try this eye drop icon. No, that's just gonna give me the, that's just gonna let me select the color from my workspace. So I think my last hurrah in looking for the white balance option in Photopea is gonna be to scroll through all of the tools for a moment and see if anything that rings a bell comes up. As suspected, I'm not getting anything noteworthy. So what I'll do is I'll look for, under exposure, I will brighten the image like they did in the book. It certainly wasn't anything drastic like that, so I'll undo that and reset. Then I'll just give it a 0.2 increase. And then I'll click OK on that, and then I'll also look for tint, which should be under hue and saturation. Perhaps not. Let me see. I was fooling myself on the levels. I knew it wasn't there. All of these have similar parameters dealing with color, so I do believe that it could actually be some of these spots as well. Yeah, and see even vibrance and saturation, those are so subtle. I think that this actually gets into some of the same things that the book is going to be talking about. So for color balance, it shows the book wanted me to intensify the greens. So I'll do, oh wait, I forgot we're dealing with different images, so I can intensify whatever I choose here. I'll still intensify my greens because there's a lot of greens in the image. So let me not go ridiculous. Let me say, let's do -10, see how that looks. Or let's do 10. Yeah, 10 will work. We'll hit OK, and we will go ahead and move to the next step. Making tonal adjustments in Camera Raw. Other sliders in the basic panel affect exposure, brightness, contrast, and saturation in the image. Except for contrast, moving a slider to the right lightens the affected area of the image, and moving it to the left darkens those areas. Exposure essentially defines the white point or the lightest point of the image, so that the camera raw adjusts everything else accordingly. Good to know. Conversely, the blacks slider sets the black point or the darkest point in the image. The highlights and shadow sliders increase detail in the highlights and the shadows respectively. The contrast slider adjusts the contrast. For more nuanced contrast adjustments, you can use the clarity slider, which adds depth to an image by increasing increasing local contrast, especially on the midtones. All right. So they want me to click auto in the basic panel. This is making tonal adjustments in camera raw. So since we're still in this camera raw panel, I don't expect too many things to line up, but it says click the basic panel, or rather click auto in the basic panel. Then it says click default in the basic panel. Change the sliders as follows. Leave exposure at 0, increase the contrast, leave the highlights. So for me, I'm just going to adjust these things. Adjust the shadows, the whites and the blacks, increase the clarity, increase the vibrance, decrease the saturation. All right, so what I'm gonna do is basically go back to all the same things that I was just looking at. Brightness and contrast, let's wiggle those around a little bit. Brightness can come up some. Let's go for 30. I can dig that. Contrast, let's see if we need to go down and up. Oh boy. Well, the subject is in black. I'm honestly, we'll go for a 15. Nah, maybe, let's see how 0 looks again. So we can go for, let's see if a 10 is good. Let's go for a 10 for now. Then we'll go down to exposure. We've already increased its exposure by 0.2. All right, so we'll leave that alone. Then we'll go down to vibrance. Vibrance, I do want to increase. Let's see how it looks if I get ridiculous, and then I can guess how much I want to do for real. So let's say 20. I can see that. I think that's decent. And then for saturation, let's go with 10. And 10 doesn't seem bad to me. I'm gonna confirm that. Then I'm going back to adjustments, image adjustments, and checking out hue and saturation. So this is a master of colors. Then there's red, yellow, green, cayenne, blue, and magenta. I will work with the hue for a moment and resetting that. I really don't need anything changed there. I've already touched on the saturation, so I'll reset that. And the lightness I've also already touched, so I'll reset that. I'm going to leave all of those untouched. Then color balance. There's a lot of green here, and so I suppose shadows, midtones, and highlights, these are what the book also mentioned. So it tells me to, in the book, they chose to decrease the whites by -2, decrease the blacks by -18, rather the shadows, what I'm really looking for. Increase the shadows by 63 and leave the highlights at 0. So they chose to leave the highlights alone and to increase the shadows by a significant number. I'm going to see about doing the same. They left the highlights. Let's see how that works for me. Okay, resetting that. I'm gonna do something with the red. I think that's kind of cool. I think I'm gonna do a little bit with the red and the blue. So I'm gonna do, well, let me see. Before I do that, let me check what the shadows say. See, this is kind of nice. I think it does some ground. It kind of grounds the image. I guess that's what the whole lesson is supposed to be showing. These edits can kind of add to a photo. So let me adjust the, I'm going to leave the green alone on both the shadows and the highlights. On the shadows, I'm going to make the reds have a 15 degree increase. I think that it gives a little bit of a sense of presence to the hanging leaves. Then maybe I'll do the same thing with the blue. Nah, I'll leave the blue alone. On the highlights, let's see about the same thing. 15 for the red. And now I think I'll do the opposite. I think I'll just keep the 15 for the blue on the highlights. I think that's decent. And then just for kicks and giggles, let's see what this midtones has to offer. So that's between the highlights and the shadows, I'm sure. I wonder if that actually reset what I did. I think that reset what I did with the highlights and the shadows just now. So I don't really want to have this be an overly blue image because it's not, I mean, it's not raining or anything. There's no reason to make it look so sad, you know? So for the shadows, I'll make the reds 15. And then I'll go back and I'll make the highlights of the blue 15. Actually, I'm going to take that 15 back for the blue because I don't want it to be like a sad scene at all. So I'm just going to keep the shadows at 15 and that'll be cool. So confirming that, the book then moves on to applying sharpening. Photoshop offers several sharpening filters, but when you need to sharpen an entire image, Camera Raw provides the best control. The sharpening controls are in the Detail panel. To see the effects of sharpening in the Preview panel, you must view the image at 100% or greater. So once again, this is going to be in the Camera Raw panel, which I don't have in Photopea, but I do have sharpening options. Now, it did just mention that the sharpening of Camera Raw is more all-inclusive than the sharpening filters, but they should accomplish the same purpose. So the book tells me to go to the Detail tab. Then it tells me to move the amount slider to 100, and then it tells me to, what does it tell me to do next? Then it tells me to move the radius slider to 0.9. So let's check out what these sharpening options are in Photopia. So it's just the regular sharpen option. I don't want that because I don't know what that did. But what I will do is see if there is a more detailed option. Filter, sharpen, sharpen more. Oh no, undo that. That's another one that I don't know what it's actually doing. Sharpen edges. Okay, so I think that these are all going to be sort of automations. I wanted it to be, I wanted it to give me the options that the book is talking about, but I'm not sure that it's going to do that. All right, well, I'll continue in the book and see what I can make of it. Move the amount slider to 100, move the radius slider to 0.9, move the detail slider to 25 if it isn't already there, and move the masking slider to 61. Decrease the amount slider. It then goes on to say, when you make adjustments in Camera Raw, the original file data is preserved. Your adjustment settings for the image are stored in the Camera Raw database file or the sidecar XMP files that accompany the original image file in the same folder. All right, synchronizing across images. So before I move on, I will go ahead and choose to sharpen something in this image, even though I have limited options. I do want to do something. So what I'll do, I'll make my own radial selection first by using the elliptical marquee tool. I'll use the shift button to make it a perfect circle. as I make my selection. And I'm going to sharpen the subject's head area. Going to filter, sharpen, and I'm going to do the standard sharpen option. And so as it showed, it is it sharpened it. You know, the pixels are almost more grainy, I guess you could say. So I'm going to press enter. No, I'm going to press Command D to deselect. And I think that when I zoom out again, I'll have a more defined image of the subject's head. Now that is not something that stands out when you look at it without knowing about that sharpening. However, it is much like the colors that we just adjusted, something that is a small tweak that has an effect. Just for the sake of practice, I'll also do the same thing to this pile of grass. Excuse me. And so this time I'll use the elliptical marquee tool, but I won't have it be a uniform circle. I'll go down to filter and sharpen, and I'll go ahead and use the same sharpen option. And so now doing command 0, that pile of grass is a little bit more visible, and it's in the foreground, so that's part of my purposes in doing that. As a matter of fact, I use the rectangular marquee tool to select all of the material in the foreground just below the feet of the subject in order to see. Now I don't need this thing going back on me. Be careful. Let me be very careful. All right, so using the rectangular marquee tool, I'm actually going to select, if I can get it to act right. Hold on. I think I've lost the controls for some reason. Uh-oh. Do not want that. I don't want it to act up on me. Let me go ahead and save it. Yeah. I forgot about saving as I go. Very important. All right, so I've just saved it in my folder. And now I am going to see if it'll allow me to use the marquee tool. See, okay, so it was about to. I'm not sure what the issue was. Oh, all right. So let me just go ahead and try Xing out of the tab because I have it saved now, and we'll rectify it. We will see. All right. So now using the rectangular marquee tool. There we go. I'm going to select As a matter of fact, I just realized that I can do that. I was trying to get more of the space nearest you, so I can hold the space bar to move the box up, release it, and then there we go. I'll actually sharpen everything. I'm having a time with this one. A hard time, that is. All right. I'm going to make that selection. I'm going to use the filter sharpen option here in order to make the foreground a little bit sharper. I think that is a decent edit. All right, moving right along, synchronizing settings across images. The upper left corner of the camera raw dialog box, click select all to select all of the images in the film strip. Click the synchronize button. Click OK in the synchronize dialog box. So this is going to do what the book talked about earlier, which was making edits on multiple images at once because you may have been in the same environment. So you want some of the same white balance edits to be made, as well as other edits in the exposure or the contrast. And then it says click OK in the synchronizing dialog box. All right, saving camera raw changes. Click select all in the camera raw dialog box and select all 3 images. Click save. Click save images in the lower left corner. In the save options dialog box, do the following. Choose save in same location for destination menu. In the file naming area, leave document name in the first box. Choose JPEG from the format menu. Then click save. Now you'll open a copy of that file in Photoshop. Of course, we're dealing with a different file and also a different photo editing software. So this isn't quite going to line up, but I'm reading it for knowledge's sake. Press the Shift key and click Open Object at the bottom of the dialog box. The open object button opens the image as a smart object in Photoshop, and you can return to Camera Raw to continue making adjustments at any time. In Photoshop, choose File, Save As. In the Save As dialog box, choose Photoshop for the format, rename the file, and navigate to the Lesson 5 folder. All right, so what I was able to do was adjust the exposure. I adjusted the exposure, the brightness and contrast, the vibrance, the hue and saturation, the color balance, as well as the shadows and the highlights. Working without a Camera Raw dialog box that is standard to Photoshop, but not to Photopia, I think that I did a decent job of emulating some of the edits that they wanted to be made. So I'm going to go ahead and resave my file as draft 2 for lesson 5 and keep the train rolling. All right, so next we are applying advanced color correction. You'll use levels, the healing brush tool, and other Photoshop features to enhance the image for this model. Actually, not for this model that they're showing, but for my subject in the other image. In Photoshop, choose File, Open your file, then click the Levels button in the Adjustments panel. Now that I do have in Photopia. So I've got my file open, I'm going to Adjustments, and then Levels. The layer is locked, so I'll unlock it by clicking on the lock. I accidentally did that. Bada bing, bada boom. Click the Calculate a More Accurate Histogram button on the left side of the histogram. Photoshop replaces the histogram. All right, I don't have that, but I don't think that's going to be a big deal. Drag the left or the black triangle toward the right to the point where the histogram indicates the darkest colors begin. I believe they're talking about right about there, because this paragraph prior says that there's a single line on the far left side of the histogram representing the current black point, but the bulk of the data begins on the furthest right end. You want to set the black point to match the beginning of that data. So I think that by moving it to about right here where the information begins, I think I'm on the right track. We'll see. Pull the middle or gray triangle a little bit to the left to slightly lighten the midtones. We moved it to value 1.18. So basically, it's not going to be something I'm going to recognize very much. I'll move it 0.18 as well. Why not? Let's see. 1.18 is what they moved it. So I'll move it 1.18, I suppose. I suppose 1.18 is probably going to be too much for my image. We'll work with it. All right, so that was applying advanced color correction. All right. Next is using the healing brush tool to remove blemishes. In the layers panel, select the background layer, then duplicate the layer from the layers panel menu. Name the layer corrections and click OK. So duplicating this layer, I'll do the right click method and duplicate. And I'll rename this corrections. All right. Zoom in on the model's face so that you can see it clearly, at least 100%. Select the Spot Healing Brush tool. In the options bar, select the following settings: brush size 7, mode normal, and type content aware. So the Spot Healing Brush tool, then, let's see. All right, I don't think those settings are available here. All right. Or rather, the brush size is. All right, yeah, let's go ahead and zoom in already. Using the hand tool to move to where I want to be. Could spot heal on the hand of the subject, but let's focus up here. Not a whole lot to be fixed. Pretty picturesque fella. All right. With the spot healing brush tool, brush out the hair across the face. Oh, I see what they're going for here. Paint over the fine lines around the eyes and the mouth. You can also brush away the red veins in the model's eyes and the freckles and spots on her face. Experiment with simply clicking, using very short strokes and creating longer brush strokes. Remove obtrusive or distancing lines and blemishes, but leave enough that the face retains its character. Select the healing brush tool hidden under the spot healing brush tool. Select a brush width of 19 pixels and hardness of 50. Using Alt click for Windows or Option click for Mac. Um, Click an area just below the dark areas beneath her eyes to create the sampling source. All right. Brush beneath the eyes to remove the dark makeup. You're changing the color now. You'll smooth the texture later. All right, so they want me to do one edit with the spot healing brush tool and then another edit with the healing brush tool. So what we can do is check out the fade haircut that the subject has. So I'll make sure I'm on the right layer so that my editing goes properly, because I see on Photopia it has current layer as an option for how the editing will happen. I'll go ahead and lower this down to a 7 like they suggested. And let's see what happens if I try to, oh boy, this is rough because I don't want to ruin the look of the fade, but we'll try it anyway. Let's see what happens if I try to spot heal the back of the subject's head such that the fade appears to be gone. I'm undoing this because I see that I had some of the green present and I don't want that. So I'm going to actually just make the fade appear to start at a higher level. Photoshop Barber, how about that? I'm gonna undo that because it really doesn't serve any purpose. It makes the image seem unnatural. But I do see what the purpose is. Let's see. I do see the purpose of using the spot healing brush tool here. Now I'll try using the healing brush, and um, I'll actually use the option key to select my area that I'll be sampling from. And I'm going to fill in, yeah, I'm going to sample from this thicker area of hair. I'm going to fill in this area of the fade to make the fade appear to fade out later. I mean, earlier. Or I'm going to edit the thickness of the fade. But actually, I really don't like that either. I think that it does no justice to the photo. Zooming out, let's see. I don't think that it makes any positive change, so I'm gonna undo it. And well, let me see. I'll leave that one, I guess. No, I won't. Yes, I will. No, I won't. Yes, I will. All right, I'll leave that one. But I don't think that it's a edit. I don't think I'll further edit with the spot healing brush tool in this image. Um, Let me see. Next, we'll go to enhancing the image using the dodge and the sponge tools. Excuse me. Excuse me. With the corrections layer still active, select the dodge tool. In the options bar, change the brush size to 65 pixels and the exposure to 30%. All right. The dodge tool. This is on. There it goes. See, it said to set the exposure to 30%. We'll try going their way. It also recommended setting the size to 65 pixels. I don't see how that's going to be helpful, so we'll avoid that for now. Brush the dodge tool over the shadows under the eyes to lighten them. What's something that I could stand to lighten in this image? Not very much, because I don't want to throw off the lighting of the image, but I do want to test these tools that the book is trying to get me to use. So I'll go ahead and try using the dodge tool on. I really should have done something like the jacket of the subject. I'll do the back of the jacket. Very effective. It definitely lightens it. So what I'll do is I will lighten an area of his hand. As effective as it is, I don't see it as beneficial in this image. So let me see. I think I did it again. Stop. I gotta use the hand tool to move around. Yeah, here we go. We'll lighten a part of the shoe using the dodge tool. Let's lighten the part that's already light. Well, no, let's extend the light. There we go. Now, I don't think that detracts from the image. As a matter of fact, we'll just leave it as that right there. It's subtle, but I think that it's substantial. All right. Select the sponge tool hidden underneath the dodge tool in the options bar. Set the hardness to 0%, the mode to saturate, and the flow to 50%. All right. Move the sponge tool over the irises of the eyes and in the eyes to increase their saturation. Select the dodge tool again. All right, so increasing the saturation of the shoes in this case. Let's go ahead and just make the, okay, I don't like that. But if we could decrease the size of the brush and focus on the back heel, I could see that being beneficial. So that doesn't look so bad. I think the main issue that I'm seeing is that these are not particularly necessary edits. I do think that they are okay, but I don't think that they are necessary. What I'll do, I'll undo these sponge edits. 1, 2, 3, and I'll take it. Actually, you know what? Redo. I'll leave that one. That's cool. It does the job well enough. Select the dodge tool again and select shadows from the range menu in the options bar. Let's see if we have that here. Dodge tool, midtones, shadows. Look at that. Look at Photopia, got the options. Use the dodge tool to lighten the shadow area above the eyelids and the areas around the irises to bring out the color. So we're lightening and bringing out the color of the shoes. Let's check it out, see what we're working with. Just to kind of test it out, I did that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a sweeping brush just to see how that works out. I see it and I'm not a fan. I think maybe that back heel could be decent though, I guess. It's the heel. Honestly, I'm not a fan. I don't think that it's a benefit to this particular image. So I'm gonna undo it and move on. Okay, then we have adjusting skin tones. Well, let me go ahead and save just for safe measure. Save to be safe. All right, going back to the full view. Adjusting the skin tones. In Photoshop CS6, you can select a color range that targets skin tones so that it's easier to adjust the levels of the skin tone of skin without affecting the entire image. The skin tone color range selects other areas of the image with a similar color, but if you're making slight adjustments, this usually is acceptable. Choose select color range. Select color range. In the color range dialog box, choose skin tones from the select menu. The preview shows that much of the image has been selected. Select detect faces. Okay, so I don't think I'm dealing with any of those options if I'm on Photopia. What I have is fuzziness under color range. And this, okay, there we go. Now I see what I'm looking at. Because wow, I was wondering what that was. I really was. For modes, it has replaced and it's got positives and negatives. So what I'll probably do is just see how this correlates to the book in terms of what it actually accomplishes. Select the text faces, decrease the fuzziness slider to 28, then click OK. Click the curves icon adjustment panel in the adjustments panel. All right, so they chose to decrease the fuzziness. I'm going to decrease it. I wish I could reset it. It was about here when I opened it. So I'm going to decrease it some more. Let's go with the 10. I'll click OK. That's going to be all right. Oh, I see what it's got going on here. It's making a selection. The selection appears on the image itself as marching ants. You'll apply a curves adjustment layer to the selection to lighten those areas of the image. So let me go ahead and select a little bit more by doing Command D. I'm going to select a little bit more in order to have, to be able to see what I'm editing. So this is going to be most of the trees. I can tell by the preview. Let me try it one more time. And we'll go with the 52. That's got enough to be seen. Okay. Click the curves icon in the adjustments panel. I'll go to image adjustments curves. Click in the middle of the graph and pull the curve slightly up. The selected areas lighten. The adjustment affects more of the image than the skin tones, but the effect blends well and it's subtle. All right then, let's give it a whirl. Image adjustments levels. Nah, I think it's curves. Indeed, it was image adjustments curves. So I'm going to click and drag the curves a little bit higher. Do I want them higher or lower? I think that higher is going to do it because I don't want them too dark. The book claims that it transfers well, so I'm going to just hope that it doesn't contrast too much. Let's try that. I'm going to confirm. I'm going to do Command D, and I'm going to undo because I don't like the look of that, but I do see the purpose in it. So undo, deselect. There we go. All right. And I'm going to go to the next step. Well, all right, I suppose I have to make some kind of use of it. So let me see. I'll go back to select, color range, and I'll just do a smaller selection, a less noticeable selection. 19, I'll go to image adjustments, levels, curves rather. And I'll just raise them slightly. Something noticeable but not outstanding. Deselect, no harm, no foul. All right, applying surface blur. You're almost done with the model. As a finishing touch, you'll apply the surface blur filter to give a smooth appearance. I don't think I have that option. I'll save this now and move to the search for surface blur in a moment. Move the surface blur, select the corrections layer and choose layer, duplicate layer. Name the new layer surface blur and click OK on the duplicate layers dialog box. I use Command J this time, and I'll call the layer surface blur. I'll call mine surface blur attempt. Move the surface blur layer between curves 1 and levels 1 layers in the layers panel. Okay, so they wanted me to make different layers for curves and levels. I don't know how I missed that, but I'll go ahead and keep pushing. With the surface blur layer selected, choose filter, blur, and surface blur. I will move it beneath the corrections layer and see how that works. Nah, actually, never mind. No, I won't. I want to see the actual effects of it, and I'll be able to better see it with it on the top layer. It may have come in the inconsistencies between programs, so let me just keep going. With the surface blur layer selected, select filter, blur, surface blur. I think they're gonna filter, blur. Okay, I thought we were gonna run into an issue. All right, then now we are looking okay. Looking okay. In the surface blur dialog box, leave the radius at 5 pixels and move the threshold to 10 levels, then click OK. Let's see how that looks. I didn't see what that changed. Oh, it's because it takes a second to change it. Let's try resetting it. Yeah, I'm not seeing what it changes. Let's see what changes with the threshold. All right, threshold does a lot to change that painted look about it. But I think I'm gonna keep the painted look. I kinda dig it. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to increase it to 20. Well. I do think that is okay. Let's see what the radius will do if I bring it way high. Oh, I think it's running slow for me. Yeah, I think I may have put too much on it with that one. But I think 15 and 20 are decent. So if it will begin to operate again, I'll go with that. See, this is the benefit of saving. I'm actually going to go ahead and close it. See if that will help. Open Photopia again. Making my new layer. Surface blur. Let's do that surface blur now because I know that it's an option. I'll do filter, blur, surface blur, and I'll go with 20 and 15. See if it will actually allow it. I think that's cool. It gives a little bit of a artistic appeal to the background. And I think that's really cool. With the surface blur layer selected, change the opacity to 30%. She looks more realistic now, but you can target the surface blur more precisely using the eraser tool. Select the eraser tool in the options bar. In the options bar, select a mid-sized brush between 10 and 50 pixels with a hardness of 10%. Select the opacity, set the opacity to 90%. Brush over the eyes, eyebrows, and defining lines of the nose and teeth. You're erasing part of the blurred layer so that to let the sharper layer below be shown through those areas. Zoom out so you can see the entire image. Increase the brush size to 400 pixels to sweep across the background, the shirt, and the hair to bring those areas back to full sharpness. I can dig what they're doing here. I really can. So what I'll do is I'll zoom in and see what things I actually want to have a retained sharpness. I think I'll hit just about the entirety of the subject's body. The suit, but see, I really like the way that the suit looks with the blur. See, I like the crispness of the colors. But I'll play along. I'll leave the background in that condition. So I will adjust the opacity of the layer, but I'm probably going to keep it the same. So if I bring the opacity all the way down, it goes back to the literal version of the image. If I bring it back up, it becomes the artistic surface blurred version. I am going to stick with the artistic surface blurred 100% opacity. However, I will use the eraser tool to get rid of some of what is happening on the subject. Ooh, actually, this is much more. I understand the concept, but I think I may actually leave this alone still. Let me see. Taking note of how this affects it as I erase through. Yes, it does highlight more of the wrinkles, more of the details of the image. I'm really just not very much concerned with those things. I prefer the surface blurred version. Oh, let me see. So if I undo that, all right, I'll play along. I'll do a little bit of an edit to get rid of the surface blur on the subject, but that's all. That is all. I don't want anything that's going to be extra noticeable. Certainly not leaving residue from what was surface blurred. And I'll hit the hand more precisely. Man, look at it. It's just going back to a non-artistic form. That is so drab. So drab. But I'll play along. All right, moving along. That actually is the conclusion of that portion, so I'll save it. Like Muda was down. Just checking on that. Okay. Correcting digital photographs in Photoshop. Adjusting shadows and highlights. Choose File and open up a new file in Photoshop. All right, if I'm really playing along, I guess this is an opportunity for me to use a different image. So let me do that. Let me do that. Let me find one with decent shadow adjustments to be made. I'll go ahead and I'll save it as a JPG just for safekeeping. I'm not sure if that's what the lesson is going to call for at all. And two is what I'll be going into next. First one will be image one. Second one will be image two. Chronological order. Ain't it a thing of beauty? All right. So I'll be closing this file and opening image two, which will be this one. All right. Choose image adjustments, shadow and lights, highlights. In the shadows area, set the amount to 50%, total width to 50%, and radius to 38 pixels. So image adjustments, actually, let me see what they said to do. Image adjustments, shadows, and highlights. cool. So we're working with something decent. If I hit reset, let's see what it looks like, because it's already looking different. Let me escape. I see it does quite adjust. Okay. All right. Photoshop automatically applies default settings to the image, lightening the background. You'll customize, it lightens the background. You'll customize the image to bring out more detail in both the shadows and the highlights and to enhance the sunset. My image doesn't have a sunset, but I will enhance and brighten the shadows and highlights. In the shadows area, change the amount, change the total tonal width, and the radius. So let's see, that's making them lighter. Let's go for darker. Honestly, I kind of like the lighter option because it's so surreal, almost like it's foggy or something. But let's see how much they adjust theirs. They changed theirs to 50%, so I'll change mine to 25. All right. Tonal width to 50%. Okay, 50 it is. It brightens things up. I think that's too much. I'm going to change it to 35. And then the radius to 38. Let's see how that looks. Let's do 25 for the radius, 35 for the tone. And I kind of like the glow around the subject, so let's see if we can make that even more relevant, even more clear. Maybe not that way. Maybe not that way. 25 is fine. For the highlights, set the amount to 14%. That's much less than the shadows. Let's see how we're looking on the highlights. I'm not even seeing the change. So I just do the 14% that the book talks about. Tonal width to 46% and the radius to 43. Okay, I see it on the white lines now. And I don't like it. I don't like it very much at all. So I'll change this to 5. And I'll change the radius to, let's go with another 5. I don't see anything to be desired here. No siree. I do not. So do 14. And I don't see midtones in this list. In the adjustments area, drag the color correction slider to, okay, never mind, that's what I was looking for, to +5, set the midtone contrast slider to 22, +22, and leave the black clip and the white clip settings at their defaults. All right, so let me just adjust this and see what I get. All right, so it looks a lot like saturation. So I'm just gonna make it a 5. Actually, I'm probably gonna change it from that. Let's make it a 30. Put a little bit of color in the scene. Put a little bit of color in the scene. All right. Click OK to accept the changes. These files save your work so far. Can do. All right. Correcting red eye. Select the zoom tool, select the red eye tool, and it's hidden under the healing brush tool. In the options bar, leave the pupil size to 50%, but change the darken amount to 74%. The darken amount specifies how dark the pupil should be. Click the red area of the girl's eye. The red reflection disappears. Then click on the red area of the girl's eye. The red area in the girl's right eye to remove the reflection as well. Double click the zoom tool to zoom out. Alright, so this image doesn't have a red eye area. However, I can zoom in and test it out on something that is present in the image. Let's do the glint of this watch. Let's see what the red eye tool will offer for that. So here on Photopia, I only have the brush size to work with, and that's just fine by me. I'll switch that to 7 and 5 actually. Now let's see if I can get any reaction out of there. So as I can see, it actually adjusts the glint of the watch, which could just as well be, as far as the program is concerned, it could just as well be a part of someone's eye. It changes it from from a lighter golden color to a darker, more neutral color. So if this was someone's eye, the glint in their eye would be changed. So I will go ahead and leave that adjustment, I suppose, just for the sake of knowing that I did use the red eye tool. All right, moving on. Reducing noise. First, zoom into the girl's face and get a good look at the noise in this image. Using the zoom tool, zoom in. Choose filter, noise, and reduce noise. Okay. Backtracking a little bit. Random extraneous pixels that aren't part of the image detail are called noise. Noise can result from using a high ISO setting on a digital camera, from underexposure, or from shooting in darkness with a long shutter speed. Noise can result. Scanned images may contain noise that results from the scanning sensor or a grain pattern from the scanned film. There are two types of image noise: luminance noise, which is grayscale data that makes an image look grainy or patchy, and color noise, which appears as colored artifacts in an image. The reduced noise filter can address both types of noise in individual color channels while preserving edge detail, and can also correct JPEG compression artifacts. Good to know, good to know, good to know. All right, so I'm going to zoom into a place where I see significant noise in this image. Let's try the area surrounding the subject. So if I've zoomed in enough, I can see that although the subject is the focus, there is some noise around his head. Or at least that is what I will be acting on the assumption of. All right. So now that I've zoomed in, click on filter, noise, reduce noise, filter, noise, reduce noise. Add noise, despeckle, dust, medium. So Let's check what add noise does. Yeah, so you could just as well reduce it. It just has a different term. Something tells me I'm not interested in this much noise. So I'm gonna hit reset X. I'm gonna zoom out. Well, I guess I better stay zoomed in so I can know what I'm working with. All right, so I'm gonna try again. Filter, noise, add noise. Let's see what the book is working with. Increase strength to 8. Strength controls the amount of luminance noise. Decrease preserve details to 30. Increase reduce color noise to 80. Move sharpen details to 30. You don't need to select remove JPEG artifact because the image is not a JPEG and has no JPEG artifacts. Such is not the case on my image, which is a JPEG, because I could not access raw image files, but I'll work around it. Drag to position the face in the preview area. Click and hold the mouse button down in the preview area to see the before image, and release the mouse button to see the corrected result. Click OK, and return to your regular zoom level. Okay, then let me adjust the noise level. I think I'm going to use this option as an opportunity to make this look like a more noisy photo, an older photograph. Whereas I'm having some issues in compatibility between programs, I do think I can actually learn a little bit about the tools by manipulating these options. Now, I don't want it to look too unprofessional, but I do think, I mean, you just look at the car up here. That looks like something out of an older image. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with 6% noise, 5% noise. Let's go with 5% noise. Cool. Fingers are crossed. Ah, shucks. I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to duplicate the image. There we go. I'm learning. Oh, your boy is learning. Your colleague, your fellow is becoming educated. All right, here we go. So filter, noise, add noise. We're going with 5%. And that's that. Now, just for, well, nah, yeah, we'll stick with that. I do want to see what would happen if I erase the noise around the subject, though. I mean, I see what would happen. I want to see whether or not I would like that result. I don't intend to keep it. I think I'm going to stay consistent with the granulation of the rest of the image, but I do want to test it out just to give it a shot. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to undo that. It does give a certain amount of focus, but I don't think it's something I'm going to worry about. I'm going to save that and move to the next step. Yes, sir, Bobby. All right. Correcting image distortion. The lens correction filter fixes common camera lens flaws, such as barrel and pincushion distortion, chromatic aberration, and vignetting. Barrel distortion is a lens defect that causes straight lines to bow out toward the edge of the image. Gotcha. I see what they're saying. It's I see what they're saying. So we don't want barrel distortion. Pincushion distortion is the opposite effect. So these aren't going to be bowing out or bowing out. Frankly, I'm not sure how you pronounce that word. But these are going to be bowing in, bending inward. Chromatic aberration appears as a color fringe along the edges of an object. Now that reminds me of how applying the shadow edits caused the subject of my image to have a bit of a glowing effect around him. Vignetting occurs when the edges of an image, especially the corners, are darker than the center. Comprende. Some lenses exhibit these defects depending on the focal length of the f-stop used. The lens correction filter may apply settings based on the camera lens, and focal length that were used to make the image. The filter can also rotate an image or fix image perspective caused by tilting the camera vertically or horizontally. The filter's image grid makes it easier and more accurate to make these adjustments than using the transform command. Okay. Choose file. Okay, they're opening the file again. Choose filter, lens correction. Then lens correction dialog box opens. Filter. There is a lens correction. I was afraid that there wouldn't be one. Amount and scale. Let me go ahead and zoom out first and foremost. Filter, lens correction. All right, so there's many more options in the Photoshop version. There's a show grid option that they are asking me to click. So it says select show grid at the bottom of the dialog box, and if it's not already selected. All right. An alignment grid overlays the image next to options for removing distortion, correcting chromatic aberration, removing vignettes, and transforming perspectives. The lens correction dialog box includes auto correction options. You'll adjust one setting in the auto correction tab for the customize and then customize the settings. In the correction area of the auto correction tab, make sure auto scale image is selected, and that transparency is selected from the edge menu. Right. I actually don't have most of these options in Photopia, but we'll work with what is available. Select the custom tab. In the custom tab, drag the remove distortion slider to about 52 degrees higher, plus 52, to remove the barrel distortion in the image. Alternatively, you could select the remove distortion tool and drag in the image preview area until the columns are straight. So one of the disconnects that I'm having is that I don't actually have barrel distortion in my image. Barrel distortion would see the trees actually bowing in. However, my image is rather non-distorted. Click OK and apply the changes and close the lens correction dialog box. For an optional step, the book says to see the effect of your change in the main image window, press the Command Z key to undo the change. So what I will definitely do is check out what lens correction has to offer in Photopia. Oh my goodness. So this is actually creating a bowing effect. It is creating what did it call it? It is creating a barrel distortion. So understand that I don't actually already have barrel distortion. I'm going to change that to 0 again, or rather I'm just going to click reset. I'm going to go ahead and make it a 5, see if that is noticeable. Yeah, see, it's actually not very noticeable, but understanding that I don't actually have much, if any, of that happening, I'm going to leave that alone. I do think that is an interesting effect that gives a bit of a border appeal. So what I will do, what I may do, create, no, what I could have done is made another layer and duplicated this just for the sake of doing so, but I don't think that's going to be the best option. I don't find it to be necessary, so I'm going to X out of here and I'm going to move to the next step. Saving this first. Actually, well, I'm already here now. I was going to say I might have just saved it on the next step, but this is okay. All right. When you're shooting a photo, this is adding depth of field. When you're shooting a photo, you often have to choose to focus either on the background or the foreground. If you want the entire image to be in focus, take 2 photos, one with the background in focus and one with the foreground in focus, and then merge the 2 in Photoshop. Because you will need to align the images exactly, it's helpful to use a tripod to keep the camera steady. Even with a handheld camera, though, you can get some amazing results. You'll add depth to the field of view in an image of a wine glass in front of a beach. Not likely. I will do something different here. Just as they are switching images, I will switch images here as well. At least that's the plan. That's the plan here, folks. So we're talking about depth of image, depth of field. All right, I've had a few 1-point perspective kind of situations here. So let's try this one. See what it will yield. Let's try this one. Xing out of that, opening up my image 3. Choose file, save as. All right, in the layers panel, hide the beach layer so that only the glass layer is visible. All right, so they've duplicated it. I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate the layer. So far, I've found that to be a safe first option anyway. Hide the bottom layer so that only the top one is visible. The glass is in focus in the background, but the background is blurred. Then show the beach layer and hide the glass layer. Now the beach is in focus, but the glass is blurred. So I'm going to simulate that effect by blurring. I'm going to let the foreground be focused in the background layer, and in the background copy layer, I'm going to let the foreground be blurred and the background be focused. So I should start by blurring the background in the background layer. I'm going to do this by using the elliptical marquee tool and making an inverted selection by holding Shift, Command, and I. That selects this area that I'm going to be calling the foreground, the background. Is that what I want to do? I think that's what I want to do. We're gonna go for it. I'm gonna do filter, blur, and we're going to do regular blur. See what that gives us. Nothing. So I'm gonna undo that. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. That will give me some options. So I'm going to drag this up so I can really see the effect. At least that's my hope. I'm not seeing anything. I'm gonna click OK, see if that gives me anything. Oh, it's because it's the bottom layer. Oops. Yeah, that'll do it. All right, so let me undo those blur options. I'm gonna make the top layer invisible for a moment. Filter, filter, blur. Let's do regular blur again. All right, not enough. Undoing that. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. That's what I'm talking about. So we'll take it down some. Try to make it look as natural as possible. And then I'm going to click OK. I'm going to do undo. Not undo, but I want that selection to be basically what I'm still working with. So let me see let me just invert this selection. There we go. Now I've gone to the now I've gone to the background copy layer, which I'm gonna call it foreground and background in a moment. This layer, I'm going to blur the foreground. I'm gonna do filter, last filter, and there we go. And this should decently simulate what I'm working with in the book. So I'm going to call this one foreground. I'm going to call that one background. Then I'm going to deselect. That doesn't look quite normal, but it gets the idea across. And what I could do is use the healing brush tool, if I'm not mistaken, to kind of mend the disconnect here. We'll see. All right, so they recommend hiding the beach layer, which is on, okay, they just want you to see the differences. So it says you'll merge the layers using the part of each layer that is in focus. First, you need to align the layers. So I'm going to actually undo until I can actually have that selection back, because I don't want to lose that selection as much as I might need it. Show both layers again, and then shift click to select both of them. Choose edit auto align layers. Let's see if I have that option. Oh, edit auto align. It does have that. That's good. Because these images were shot from the same angle, auto will work just fine. Select auto if it isn't already selected. Make sure neither vignette removal nor geometric distortion is selected. Then click OK on the align layers. OK to align the layers. Now that the layers are perfectly aligned, you're ready to blend them. All right, edit, align, auto align. Let's see what we're working with. It's a duplication of the same layer, so I don't think that alignment is going to be an issue. Make sure that both layers are still selected in the layers panel, then choose edit, auto blend layers. Edit, auto blend. The blended areas are too large. How about that? What happens if I deselect? looks like that's a limitation of Photopia. Select stack images and seamless tones and colors, and then click OK. Choose layers. Choose layer, merge visible. Both wine glass and the beach behind it are now in focus. Now you'll merge the layers to make it easier to make other adjustments. All right. Let me see. Okay, so now because I'm kind of working in a different situation here, I am going to adjust this how I would like for it to be adjusted. So let me see. I'll have the background still blurred, but I'm going to unblur it, definitely the part of the foreground wherein the subject is located. I'm going to deselect. I'm going to make another selection with the, yeah, you know what? There's a lot of ways to go about this. I'm going to go a straight geometric selection. I'm going to delete that. Oh, no, not from that one. I'm going to delete it from the, there we go. I'm going to delete it from the background layer. Actually, I don't think I like that either. I'm going to deselect. I'm going to make an elliptical. I thought about an elliptical at first and I decided against it. I'm going to make it an elliptical. I'm going to delete that portion from the foreground layer, from the background layer rather, such as to make the subject become in focus. Then I'm going to I'm also going to delete the portion of the background which has allowed for the trees and buildings to appear in focus because I actually want them out of focus too. So I'm just going to select everything the same way I did before. I'm going to use the elliptical marquee to make a curve, and I'll inverse select with Command Shift I. Then I will delete to allow it to be blurred. It's deleted from the background. And I'll even, let me see. Yeah, because, oh, I kind of like the way that it's got that stream of focus right there. But I'm not going to be too artistic. I don't want to be overly artistic. So I'll go ahead and drag that down some to also delete this here so that we can, oh no, actually I see what's happening. You know what I'll do, I'll select that area with the rectangular marquee tool. With the lasso tool rather. I'll make sure I have that area selected and blur it. I'll just blur it manually. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. I'll drag that up. Wrong answer because it's not the right layer. Let's try it here. Filter, Gaussian blur. Yeah, not bad, not bad. Okay. Actually, yes, bad because it didn't do the job. All right, well, I do think I get the idea though. I'm going to deselect that. My original idea, which I may just go ahead with, was to actually take a few strips of the part that's been taken out of focus and actually do it with a few other locations as well. I think would be an interesting way to edit this image. Ultimately, it doesn't really have the artistic appeal so much as it just seems to draw things out of whack. What I would like to do instead is to use the sponge tool to change the saturation. That would be closer to what I'm looking for in terms of an artistic appeal. Of course, not anything ugly like that. Something more like this, sort of. I think I got too large with the brush size. Something like this. See, that's kind of tight, in my opinion. So, since that's not the assignment at hand, I think I'll leave it alone. I'll save this and I'll move to the next step. Extending objects with the content aware move tool. You'll use the new content aware move tool to add a few more posts to the branch, to the beach, so that they echo the deck rails, creating a smoother rhythm for the composition. So basically, we're making duplicates. Select the area. Select the content aware move tool, which is hidden beneath the red eye removal tool. All right. What I will be duplicating is this patch of grass right here. It kind of sticks out on the edge, and I forgot to undo that last part. There we go. It kind of sticks out right there. But I will actually be duplicating that so that the walkway seems a little bit less smooth. Not exactly what I would say is a benefit of the groundskeeping, but in terms of photo editing, I think that it would show a little bit of aptitude. All right. In the options bar, choose extend from the mode menu and strict from the adaptation menu. All right, I don't have those options, but I will continue on. Draw a marquee around the two pier posts and end the row. On the end of the row, including some of the sand. So basically draw a marquee around your subject. Draw the selection slightly down, drag the selection slightly down and to the right of the original post. When you release the mouse, Photoshop adds two new posts and blends them with the scene neatly. Affirmative. Let's give it a rock and roll. Let's give it a try. Let's give it the old college try. So we'll use the version in the background layer because it's got the blur applied. All right, so I'm going to create my marquee. Then I'm going to drag it. I'm going to deselect. So I think more than what I was expecting, it actually rather than duplicating it, sort of tried to it replaced it. Let me see if there's a way that I can change that, or if there's not. I don't think there is. Did it tell me to do anything like hold a particular button? I don't think that it did. I think it may have to do with the extend and strict options that it spoke about. But I will go ahead and, oh, actually, I have one more thing I do need to try. The unite and subtract and intersect options. So this is in the replace mode, so that's why I replaced it. Let's try what happens when I use intersect. How about subtract? Somehow that doesn't sound like what I'm looking for. Nope. I think that this option, unite, may be what I'm looking for. I think that might just be it. Although I'm not sure why this plus sign is showing up for me. That doesn't look like what I'm looking for. I didn't know that Photopia had that symbol. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just stick with the original option just for safety's sake. I can tell that it's been moved because I've moved it beneath this piece of moss on the ground. And so I'll go ahead and deselect that. And now, actually I'm gonna move it a little bit closer to the ground. Yeah, now it's more seamless. All right, I'm satisfied with that. Extending objects with the content aware, move to the side. That's what I just did. All right, adding interactive blur. I'm going to save this. And we'll add that interactive blur. Adding interactive blur. Photoshop CS6 introduces interactive blurs which let you customize the blur as you preview it in your image. You'll apply an iris blur to add a vignette around the glass. Okay, I see what they're going for here. I forgot to actually merge the images. Let me go ahead and merge them like they mentioned doing earlier. So having both selected, both layers, I'll go ahead and choose merge layers. And that'll work well enough. Choose filter, blur, iris blur. Let's see if Photopia can match that. Filter, blur. I don't see an iris blur. Let's see about radial blur. Okay, that's a little bit too wild, so I don't think that's what we're looking for. I do see what they're talking about in the book. I just don't think that Photopia has that option. I have seen that in Photoshop. And it's got some nice options. Box blur. A box blur ain't the worst thing in the world. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I think we're gonna choose something else. All right, I think this may be, well, of course, this is achieving something different than the iris blur, but I do appreciate the vision here. I can see some potential in this one. All right, so we're gonna check out what the book has to say about iris blur. Drag the center pin so that it's on the right side of the wine glass. Click the ellipses and drag to enlarge the scope of the blur. Press Alt for Windows or Option for Mac as you click and drag the feather handles to match those in the second image below. Click and drag next to the focus ring to reduce the amount of blur to 6 pixels, creating a gradual but noticeable blur. So the big benefit with the iris blur is the gradualness, the gradual quality of the blur. You can actually really adjust it to kind of subtly come into play. Click OK in the options bar to apply the blur. Click the vibrance button in the adjustments panel. So I'll go ahead and, well, let me see. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and choose a blur, and then I'll add some vibrance. I think I'm going to undo that merge that I did, because even though the book saw a purpose in merging them, I see my purpose in keeping them unmerged so that I can retain the focused subject while also doing the blurred edits. So I will choose, I think I like motion blur. Let's give it a shot. Let's give it a whirl. Oh, it's okay, but I don't think that it's really necessary. I don't think it really serves to do much for the image, so I'll reset that, and I will try one other one maybe. Blur, lens blur. As a matter of fact, I wonder if that's what I was, no. Nah, lens blur has more to do with the camera lens. All right. And to be honest, I'm fine with surface blur again. Surface blur had that nice artistic appeal, and I do like that nice artistic appeal. I also think that I might have challenged the computer too much by clicking on a high radius. All right, so decision time. I'll do blur. I will do motion blur, and I'll just keep it low level instead of 14. I'll just do 6. Then I'll adjust the vibrance by going to image. We'll merge them for this. I will merge the layers. Merge layers, image, adjustments, vibrance. I'll bring that up some. Not that much. Let's go for 25. And click OK. And the saturation I'll adjust as well. Then I'll save my work. And that will be that. Image, vibrance, saturation. Let's get that up to, I kind of like it high, but let's do 20, see how that works. Nothing too ridiculous, but still a little bit of color in there. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. So I'm going to save that. And since I'm already so far off of the beaten path as far as the book goes, in the sense that I've used a different image and some of the options that they had were not available for me, I'm going to go ahead and do my stamp, my sponge edits. Just because I think that there is some value from a from the standpoint of the photo appeal. Well, I think it looks nice. I think it's got an artistic appeal. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't think that this is really getting the job done. I'm not say that for sure, but I'm trying. Let me see. Yeah, let me just do that. Let me actually focus on the subject. that's nice. So if I do that, but actually make it a little bit more intentional. Marquee tool, sponge, just sponge it up. I can see some value in that. Personally, I can. All right, as much as I can see that, I don't want it to have that clear elliptical shape. So let me go ahead and just do it like that. Same thing. I don't want it to be sloppy, but I also don't want it to be uniform. I think that might be it. And at this point, I suppose I've gotten into the strictly creative area. So I think that'll do. That'll do. And then let me also do the same thing here, just to give a little bit of something to look at. I'm telling you, this artistic value is something else. Yeah, I think the secret's out that I'm really just scribbling. I like the concept, but I don't think that it really accomplishes what I'm looking for. So what I'll do, try holding the shift key again, see if that'll do the job. And if it doesn't, then I'll call it a day. All right, I guess that'll do it. I see some value in it. It's not everything I hope for, but I think that it does a job. I think it does a job. I think that's cool. This right here, the way it looks like it's coming out of the ground, that's pretty dope. I think that's pretty dope. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and save that. It's gonna be a bonus version. I'll save this as a JPG just for safekeeping. Actually, I'll save the bonus and I'll save the original for safekeeping. So do these edits. All right. Safekeeping save. Slide into first and he's good. All right. And I actually forgot to save this one for safekeeping as JPG. So I'm going to X out of that. I'm going to open up the previous image 2 file. Save that one as JPG. And that is going to conclude this edition of working with Mr. Williams. play the outro. Don't let them tell you I never had a talent. Grammy Award winner right here. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Okay. So thank you for tuning in. And that's lesson 5. All right.